Hey everyone, it's Karen, and we are going to be reading Fish Syrup today, which is chapter 8 from Peppermints in the Parlor. Now, Miss Emily, best we get a few things straightened out before you end up becoming the main course of the snake lady at her nearest meal. Kipper strolled purposefully into the cellar laundry room, glaring at Emily. He had ordered her to wait there for him while he finished his business with Miss Plumley. First, howsomever, you must tell me exactly what you were doing snooping about that room, and then you can tell me what kind of foolishness you was up to stealing a peppermint. I stammered Emily. Then suddenly this was all too much for her, and she ended up doing what she vowed she would not do. She burst into tears. The look in Kipper's eyes instantly softened. Come on now, don't cry. I'm sorry, truly I am. I shouldn't have spoken to you so cross after the horrors you've just been through. No matter what you done, you most likely been punished enough already. But I didn't do anything, sobbed Emily. I mean, not what you think. I wasn't snooping, and I didn't steal a peppermint. Someone else dropped. I mean, it just fell from somewhere, and I ran in to get it. Fell from somewhere. From heaven, I suspect. Well, I guess I should feel august. That's weird. Okay. Kipper slapped his forehead. You was on a rescue mission, but you don't want to tell me for what party, 'cause you ain't certain about my credentials. Well, can't say I blame you after my performance in the kitchen with old Tilly. Performance? Asked Emily. Kipper grinned dryly. That's what it were, Emily. No more than just a performance. Didn't have time to explain about it before I'd done, and haven't found time to explain about it afterwards. But I done it so Tilly wouldn't think that you and me were getting too friendly. And she ain't got Aunt Twice to care for her, nor any pa either. And she goes pea green over anyone liking anyone else that ain't Tilly. Now, does that explain why I done what I done? Emily nodded, unable to speak. She knew now that she had found a friend after all, and her feet felt as if they were floating 6 inches off the ground. Well then, said Kipper, would you like to explain further why you done what you done? Meaning, who you're aiming to protect? It was Mr. Bottle, Emily said. He pulled out his handkerchief, and out popped the peppermint onto the floor. It rolled into Mrs. Meaching's room, and I went after it. So it were Mr. Bottle, exclaimed Kipper. Well, I'll be a pickled perch, as Pa always says. I couldn't let Miss Meaching find the peppermint and blame poor Mr. Bottle for stealing it, Emily said. It might have killed him dead away. Might have done that, said Kipper. What you done was a kind, brave thing, Emily. But you shouldn't have had to do it. His face flushed with anger. Blamed peppermints. Don't know why the snake lady keeps 'em round except for meanness or to act as an evil spell. That's what they are, Emily. No reason why she can't allow the poor old ones a taste or two now and then. She says it rots their choppers. Most of them ain't got choppers, except in the ones they put by their bed at night. And as for Tilly... What about Tilly? Emily asked. Well, Tilly's not a hard-hearted girl nor anything like that, but... Kipper hesitated and then began to sing softly, another made-up verse to London Bridge. Tilly tells for peppermints, peppermints, peppermints. Tilly tells for peppermints, best be careful. Oh, of course, he added quickly. Ain't right to be too hard on her, Emily. She don't know any better, and the snake lady is most all the family she knows. But you best be careful around her anyway. You best be careful about everything. It ain't just shrimp or a sardine that swims into a net, as Pa always says. But speaking of being careful, what are we to do about this? Kipper dipped into his pocket and brought out the peppermint that had been the cause for so much peril for Emily. She shuddered at the sight of it. What if Mr. Bottle goes to look for it and can't find it? Won't he die of fright all the same? Them old folks' memories ain't too good, Kipper said. I expect he might just think he ate it already and forgot when. Then you eat it, said Emily. Not me, Kipper grinned ruefully. If you got to know the truth, peppermints give me the pip. Emily giggled. Say, I know what I'll do with a peppermint, Kipper exclaimed. He shoved it back into his pockets. I'll give it to one of the little water rats, which is always what Pa calls the urchins that live around the wharf. I'll give it to the little shrimper, what carries water for him when I'm not around. But look, I best be going. I ain't expected to be here less I'm doing a chore. Will I see you again soon? Emily asked. Not too soon, I'm afraid. Now you're here, I ain't going to be given as much work to do. I'm sorry, Kipper, Emily cried. Now ain't your fault. You come free, Kipper said cheerfully. Anyway, I'm building up a delivery business. I got 2 regular customers now, and I got some more. So don't you worry about it. Just mind, be careful. With that warning and a warm smile, Kipper left, and Emily was alone again. It turned out to be 5 whole, long, dreary days before Kipper returned to the mansion. In the meantime, Emily made not one step of progress towards helping the old people. She began to wonder if they were all too sunk in despair and fearful old age as ever to be helped. As for solving any of the mystery, she was no farther along than when she first arrived. The only happy spot in her life was a conversation she had with Aunt Twice about Mama and Papa, even though it was cut short by the arrival of Tilly again wanting to talk about her departed Ma and Pa. As for the food, Emily could not eat more than a few bites of the soup, or gruel, or stew, depending on the time of day, and none of the bread, so she was growing weaker and weaker. As a result, her work, instead of getting better and better, was growing worse. That meant that Tilly was having to work harder, and so, despite her own healthy appetite, was growing tireder and tireder. And as a result, crosser and crosser. She grumbled continuously about the quality of Emily's work and constantly referred to them good old days when Kipper was hired to help her with the chores. It was early one afternoon when Emily was at work in the laundry room. Steam poured from a large tin wash boilers on the stove. Water drizzled down the stone walls already blackened and mildewed by 1,000 earlier laundries. Baskets were heaped with mountains of dirty linens that seemed to Emily to grow taller and taller instead of shorter and shorter as she washed. She was kneeling on the cold, damp stone floor before an iron wash tub, trying to rub the spots from a very dirty linen sheet. Her knuckles scraped painfully on the wicked zinc crimps of the washboard, and tears were again perilously close to spilling down her cheeks. Tilly had left her with a severe warning that she had better have at least one thing properly washed, and Emily was certain that Tilly would return long before any spots or stains had departed. Suddenly, Emily heard a voice over the sound of the wash bubbling gloomily on the stove. Ain't much fun down on your knees, on your knees, on your knees. I will help you if you please, my fair lady. Kipper! None other. See here, you look 'bout done in. And I meant the words in the song. How about letting me take a turn at that? As he was talking, Kipper was already peeling off his jacket and rolling up his shirt sleeves. No, Emily shook her head hard. It wouldn't be fair. What wouldn't be fair about it? You wouldn't be paid for it as you were before, Kipper shrugged. Doesn't matter. Pa says you don't need to be paid for every last thing you do. Not in money, anyways. He's living a payment for breathing, and smile's a payment for a good turn. A smile's all I need, Emily. Emily obliged him with one, but then looked fearfully over her shoulder. What about Tilly? Remember what I said about working Tilly just right? Kipper grinned. Well, my performance worked. She knows she ain't got anything to worry about as far as you and me is concerned. When I told her I'd come help with laundry free, she looked pleased, and pleased as can be. Old Till never minded anyone helping with the chores round Sugar Hill Hall, what I can collect. So move on and let me at the washboard. Kipper dipped his strong freckled arms into the tub and went after the dirty linen, as if he were attacking a sea serpent. Emily couldn't believe how quickly the stubborn spots vanished. Say, he said, examining her critically over the washboard. Ain't you got more'n that to wear? Last 2 times I seen you, you been in the same garment. I know it ain't polite to say so, Emily, but that dress looks about ready to be a soot rag. Oh, I had another dress, but... Emily's voice faded. I gave it to Tilly. Gave it to Tilly, Kipper exploded. Whatever for? Tilly can't get anything of yours over her head. She thought it was pretty, Emily said, remembering the endless hours she spent going over the pretty things in her traveling bag with Tilly. So I just gave it to her. More than likely she just took it, said Kipper. Poor old Tilly never had anything pretty, anyway. He shook his head. I expect the other dress ain't more useful than the one you've got on. It won't be for long, Emily said quickly. I've 2 trunks coming filled with clothes. Well, I hope it don't take too long for 'em to get here, else your dress will fall right off you. Kipper appraised Emily's appearance again and sighed. You know something? You're the skinniest person I ever did see, and getting skinnier all the time. Ain't you eating any of that delicious soup and bread provided by the management? He grinned wryly. I try, Emily said. I think I'm hungry, but when I get to the table and see food, I can't eat it. And to think of all the good things your aunt fixes for the snake lady, Kipper said grimly. Enough you need a dozen and lots to spare, too. Beats me what they do with it all. Do you wonder about that, too? Emily looked over her shoulder and dropped her voice. Oh, Kipper, there are so many questions I have about Sugar Hill Hall. So many mysteries. A second one is about Mrs. Plumley. Why should anyone who appears so nice be friends with Mrs. Meaching? Kipper shook his head. Never have figured that one out either. And there's a ballroom too, Emily said. What ballroom? There, you see, Emily exclaimed softly. Tilly didn't know about it either. She said I was stupid. And now you don't know about it either, but there is a ballroom, Kipper, right across from the dining room, even though there aren't any doors. You know something, Emily? Kipper said thoughtfully. I ain't of the mind that you're stupid at all. I think you might be right about some kind of room there. You can tell it from the outside, the shape of the mansion, excepting there aren't any windows. I used to wonder about it. Say, how come you know so much about a room there? 'Cause I was here when I was a little girl. Kipper's eyes widened. Here? Yes, and there's a huge ballroom with 2 gold glass doors right where I said. I was here with Mama and Papa, and a big ball was given for them by Aunt Twice and Uncle Twice. Oh, Emily gasped and threw a hand to her mouth. What's wrong? Kipper asked anxiously. Emily began to tremble. I promised Aunt Twice I would never say his name aloud. She told me I was to think of him as dead. Well, I ain't never heard of any Uncle Twice alive or dead, Kipper said. But now I know about him, there ain't a more cause for you not to tell me all you know, Emily. This couldn't be denied, so she poured out the whole conversation she had with her aunt on the first night of Sugar Hill Hall, including the information that Aunt Twice was being held prisoner there to protect someone's life. Whew! Kipper whistled softly when she finished. I always suspicioned there was a kind of hocus pocus about this place, and your aunt acting scared out of her wits about all that. But never so much as that. Emily, you know something? I wonder if it's your uncle's life she's protecting. That's what I thought, Emily told him. But what if it isn't? What if it's someone else's life? Supposing Uncle Twice has become a wicked man. And supposing Aunt Twice is protecting someone from him. That's a lot of supposing you're doing, Kipper said. Right now we ain't got proof of anything. How do we get proof? Emily asked. Don't rightly know. All I know is we got to keep our wits sharp, our eyes open, and our mouths shut, except to each other. Agreed? Emily nodded. Agreed. But for now, Kipper went on, lest you waste way to a minnow, as Pa says. First things you got to do is increase your appetite so you can eat the soup and the bread. If only you could have some of Pa's fish syrup. That would build up your appetite so you could eat just about anything. Fish syrup? It sounded worse to Emily than all the pills and potions she had to choke down in her whole life. Kipper laughed out loud. What a face! It don't taste that bad. Still chuckling, he returned to scrubbing, but suddenly he sat back on his heels and slapped his leg with a loud, wet smack. Dingus, Emily! I'm going to bring you some of that syrup. Pa will let me have all I want. I know he will, for a poor little mite. Which is what he's calling you now. You can hide it in your room and not tell the snake lady, nor Tilly, nor anybody else about it. Will you take it if I bring it to you? What if I can't keep it down? Emily remembered this all too well from her early experiences along this line. Oh, you won't have trouble, Kipper said. Fish syrup goes down smoothly and easily. Ain't nobody ever knowed it giving it back once I slid it past their gullet. Would you try it? Emily hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. Kipper beamed. You won't be sorry. You'll see Pa will be blessed. Soon you'll be eating everything. Then when you... As Kipper talked, Emily's mind began to wander. It wandered right out of the laundry room, up the stairs and through the kitchen, past the dining room and the parlor, and up the stairs to the upper reaches of Sugar Hill Hall. There it finally stopped as she thought if there was something that could be done about her appetite. Couldn't it also help the appetites of the old people? Fish syrup. It certainly didn't sound like something she would have chosen for a plan to help them, considering how she herself felt about potions and pills, but it had possibilities, and it was a beginning. Fish syrup, well... Emily, ain't you been listening to a word I said? Kipper, Emily's voice came from far away. How many bottles of fish syrup will your pa let you bring? How many bottles? Kipper looked puzzled. As many as you like, but how many bottles can a tadpole your size put away? Not me, silly, said Emily. The old people. If it can improve my appetite, it ought to improve theirs too. No doubt, because it improves everybody's. But who would give it to them, and how? Me, replied Emily. And I can take it around to them in my cleaning bucket. Kipper shook his head so violently that the red curls danced onto his forehead. Too dangerous. I ain't about to allow that. Oh, Kipper, I'm certain I could do it safely. No one would ever find out. Well, Kipper scratched one ear with a soapy finger. Please, Kipper, say you'll bring it. Well, Kipper scratched the other ear. Don't know how Pa will take to it, you taking such chances. Please, Emily pleaded. I'll be so careful, I promise. Well, said Kipper, ain't no more ears left to scratch. He finally agreed to bring enough fish syrup for everyone. All right, we will read chapter 9 another day. I'm curious if you guys would like to try fish syrup or if you would not even do it because it sounds too disgusting. Anyway, I will see you guys soon. Bye.